Still joined here in the studio by Health Minister Maria Caulfield and Shadow Health Minister Andrew Gwynn.
You've been sending in your questions, telling us who you are, mostly, where you're from. Could do better for next week. Just to remind you of that email, gbnews.com/yoursay. Our panel are ready and waiting because this programme is different from the others. Not about our questions, is it? Nope. It's all about yours.
And the first question from Jean, but Jean, do tell us where you are. To you, Maria Caulfield, you're Health Minister. Jean asks, although smoking is a serious subject, why on earth is your leader, Rishi Sunak, giving so much time to this when the whole world's falling apart?
Well, it is important because, you know, we roughly spend about £18 billion a year on smoking-related issues. And, you know, if we heard in Prime Minister's questions about the importance of tax cuts, people really want tax cuts. If we are going to cut tax, we need some low-hanging fruit. And this money we're spending on smoking is completely preventable, but it will save lives as well. There's about 80,000 people a year who die from smoking. So we want the next generation to have better opportunities in life, which is a very Conservative principle.
But I think Jean's point, and this struck me at the last Conservative Party conference, actually, because this was his big announcement in his conference speech when, you know, the leaders want the country to be saying, oh, this is what you're going to do. I mean, I agree with Jean, really. Smoking is serious, but is it the most serious thing? Is that the thing that you most want to tell the nation? This is my number one priority?
Well, it's part of the Prime Minister's kind of five-point plan. You know, we know that he wants to tackle immigration, getting inflation down, which he's achieved, growing the economy, the NHS waiting list. A lot of that is related to smoking-related illnesses. So it's part of a wider piece. It's not obviously the only thing we're doing, but it is important. And I think, you know, in years to come, people will wonder why we didn't do it years ago.
Andrew Gwynn, you were whipped to vote in favour of this ban for 15-year-olds and under to smoke. Is that not nanny state gone mad?
Well, it's not nanny state gone mad. And look, although the Labour Party did whip its MPs, it did so because this is a measure we fully support. And, you know, we were happy to support the government because the ambition of a smoke-free England is within our grasp. And, you know, I want my grandchildren to live in a world where tobacco products aren't a thing. And this is the first step towards that, ensuring that any child born after 2009 is not going to be legally able to buy cigarettes, whilst accepting that those born after 2009 may well already be addicted to nicotine, and therefore the government's efforts, whether it's Maria's government or a future Labour government, will be driving down that nicotine addiction and trying to wean people.
What else will you, if you perform the government next time, will you be banning sugar? What else will the Labour want to ban?
No, I think you have to make a reasoned difference here in that smoking and nicotine is incredibly addictive. You don't have to have that many cigarettes to actually be hooked on nicotine. That's not the same. You know, you can have a moderate drink every now and then and it doesn't damage your health. You can have a takeaway every now and then, it doesn't damage your health. I mean, obviously, if you do it all the time and that's your diet, it's going to have an impact on your health and well-being. But for most people, having the odd glass of wine, having the odd takeaway is not going to damage their health in the same way that getting hooked on nicotine would.
Andrew Gwynn, I think about those current smokers, the older generation, that they'll still be able to carry on smoking. Largely working class. Some of them your voters. Is it really fair that tax is so high? It's such a regressive tax, isn't it, given the sort of demographic of people that continue to smoke?
But look, I think how we've got to look at this, and Maria's absolutely right, it's a huge burden on society in how we pay for smoking-related illnesses. And certainly smoking is the largest contributory factor to cancer still in this country. If we want to tackle the health inequalities in constituencies like mine, where smoking prevalence is still far too high, Gloria, then we've got to look at how we bring people off tobacco. And that means an investment in smoking cessation and public health so that people can make that informed decision.
Maria Caulfield, a lot of MPs, Tory MPs on the right, think it'll fall apart because of the differential in the age. That only you can be 60 or 59 and not be able to smoke in a decade or so time. Jean also says, what happens to overseas visitors coming here? They're caught smoking. If they don't fall into the right age category, will they be challenged or barred from pubs?
Well, you can't smoke in pubs already. That's already against the law for any age.
outside, though.
But it's about buying the tobacco product. So it's not about the actual smoking. So it will be illegal for children, as they get older, to buy tobacco products, not just cigarettes. So it's not about the smoking itself. It's about getting that access. Most people start before they're 21, 22, and most smokers I speak to really regret starting and would do anything to give up. So, this is about changing cultures, and over years, we will see that become a smoke-free generation.
Yeah. We are going to go to you, and we're going to change the subject. We might come back to smoking because Nikolai also had a good question on this. But Kate from Warwickshire has been in touch, and I think Andrew Gwynn from Labour, this is really only a question for you. My question for Keir Starmer: is he going to apologise to the Labour MP Rosie Duffield in light of the Cass report? You will know that this was the report conducted by an NHS paediatrician, which said that transitioning below as a child is sort of not a good idea. I hope I haven't paraphrased that too badly.
No, I think that's a fair synopsis of it. Look, this is a very sensitive issue, and I can't even begin to understand, as somebody who feels very comfortable in the body that I was born into, can't even begin to understand how somebody who doesn't feel comfortable in the body that they were born into feels, and what that does to their mental health, what that does to how they feel throughout life. And so this is a very serious issue that I think we have to treat sensitively. But ultimately, the Cass report, we accept its findings, and protecting children and adolescents from making a life-changing decision when they are not really of the right age to be making that decision, I think is right. I think that we need to reflect on what the Cass report has come out with, and we absolutely have to make the changes, as the government is doing, to ensure that children are protected. And when people decide to transition, which is a huge decision to make, it has to be at the right time for them to do that with the right support, because it is a big change. But yes, I would like Keir to meet with Rosie to discuss and to consider Rosie's views. She's been very brave raising these issues over a long period of time. She's received a lot of flack from all sides, but particularly from her own side.
Have you met her yourself?
I have met Rosie. Rosie's a friend of mine, and I've always respected her views on this issue. I think she adds to the debate, and it's a debate that has to have a consideration of all arguments, and Rosie's views are not wrong. They are.
Would you say sorry now on air to Rosie Duffield on behalf of Labour?
Well, I personally am sorry that Rosie has been treated the way Rosie's been treated. Rosie's a friend, and her views are valid as we come to debate these very sensitive topics. I want to take the toxicity out of it, because it is pretty vile, and these are serious issues, and they do a disservice to women, and they do a disservice to trans people. And I think we need to approach this much more sensitively.
Credit where credit's due. The Labour Party seems to have moved a long way from being unable to answer whether women can have penises. Yeah, getting that right. Yes, haven't they?
Well, yeah, but, the government was, pretty instrumental in a lot of these changes. We've already banned, puberty blockers for children. This is about children rather than adults who want to take decisions. We've closed down the Tavistock and opening up 2 new centres across the country for children who have got gender dysphoria, but not go down the route of same-sex hormones or puberty blockers. And we were criticised quite heavily at the time for doing that. The Cass review has vindicated our actions, and there's still more work to do to make sure those safeguards are in place, to make sure that this never happens again. But people like Rosie, it's a wider discussion, people like Rosie who raise concerns about quite contentious issues, we need to learn to hear those
Yes.
views without it turning into a really toxic debate. So I think there's lessons across the board,
Yeah,
but on
I
this
agree.
particular issue, the government has been pretty robust in its response.
Everyone agrees. There we
Cross-party
go.
consensus there, and on the issue
partly rightly so.
of transitioning,
'cause there are
which
some-
is even
Yes.
a bigger...
Yeah, and rightly
bigger
so. There are children here going through a lot, and perhaps it's not really a political debate all the time. Maybe.
Yeah.
Barry's message in, Maria Caulfield. Can somebody please ask the PM when he's going to stop pandering to the woke and ban illegal migration? On the day, of course, you'll be in the Parliament later trying to overturn the Laws Amendments to the Rwanda Bill.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, getting down illegal immigration is a key priority. We're already seeing about 25,000 people a year being returned. The Rwanda bill is not just about getting planes off the ground as a deterrent for people who enter here illegally. There's powers to disapply the Human Rights Act for those constant challenges to deportation. There's powers for ministers to overrule some of the European Court judgments which enable deportations to be stopped. So it's more than about getting planes off the ground.
Andrew Quinn, just back it. Should
Yeah.
Labour just back it? It might work. Anything's
If it
worth
works.
a go. But the Labour Party position is, even if it does work, we're still scrapping it. It doesn't sit right, does it?
But look, Gloria, we have to look at this in the round. Is it a good use of public money for it to cost £2 million per person to send them to Rwanda? I don't think it is. I don't think any sane-minded person would think it is worth £2 million per person. And then that's just the cost of getting them to Rwanda. The cost of housing them here, at the moment, a lot of money is spent on hotel costs, and the government, I think, is right to want to remove those hotel costs altogether. But its answer...
What's it, more barges? What do you do?
Well, its main answer is to do up 2 RAF bases. They scheduled £5 million per base. It turns out that one base is going to cost £49 million to do up, and the other base £27 million. That cost is far more than the cost of putting them in hotels. In fact, you could put all those illegal immigrants on a cruise liner and send them round the world in perpetuity at a lesser cost than this government's paying. We've got to tackle the issue at source. That means cracking the gangs. It means working with our
Do you not
European
think they try
partners.
to crack the gangs? I mean, seriously, it's
We
a
need
great line, but of course everybody
we need to do a
would want to
lot
crack the
more
gangs.
across Europe, because the point is, if people get across the Med, the channel's a cinch. So why aren't we helping our European partners stopping these people coming across the Med? Because once they get to Europe, the channel's nothing if you've crossed the Mediterranean.
Yes, well, Maria, would you agree with that? I mean, it's interesting.
I think, you know, we've heard that Keir Starmer has been over to Europe to start negotiations about taking quotas of people in order to cooperate with EU countries. That's not something we would support. We absolutely are tackling the backlog. There's huge progress made towards the end of the last year. But it's being tackled, and people are being deported.
It's not being tackled, it's your backlog.
Entries people are being turned away as well. And the final kind of piece of the jigsaw is the Rwanda flights, which are a deterrent, but which also will try and stop those constant legal challenges, both disapplying the Human Rights Act and giving ministers powers to overrule some of those emergency European Court decisions, which take people literally off flights as they're being deported. So the Rwanda bill is about much more than sending people to Rwanda.
Moving on quickly, Andrew Gwynn. Bev Turner mentioned smacking earlier in her handover to this programme.
She's been reborn as Christina.
Well, Christina got in touch, and Christina, do say where you're from when you do send these brilliant messages in and questions. She says that parents should be allowed to discipline their own children with a smack if they judge it correct at the right time. If a child runs out of the road, for example, or doesn't listen to a parent, what do you think? Smacking?
Look, as a parent and a grandparent, I have been in the fortunate position that I have never, ever smacked my children. I don't like violence towards anybody. Chris, if I smacked you right now, you'd be justified to smack me back.
I might deserve it, Andrew.
but I'm very jealous over their ties. They've been wearing the same ties or about to have fisticuffs.
Well, I'm a bit miffed that you tweeted who wears it best.
Okay, anyway, on a serious point, smacking children.
But smacking children, look, if I smacked you, I'd be charged with assault. I don't think it's right to smack children.
Any parent ever.
But discipline them, certainly. I've managed to discipline all 3 of my children and my grandchild without ever ever resorting to physical violence.
OK, Maria
Maria.
Caulfield.
Look, I don't think the government, certainly a Conservative government, is not in the place to be telling parents how to bring up their children. You know, we've had a nanny state debate around smoking, and for me, the benefits of having a smoke-free generation outweigh any of the concerns. But I think telling parents how to bring up their children is just a step too far for the state.
Interesting. We're now going to move into your briefs. Health Minister, wannabe Health Minister. It's the big question.
OK. NHS and A&E waiting lists are too long, so what's the plan to cut down on those waiting lists? And the question here is from
Mary.
So who's going first?
You're first, quickly.
All right, well, I'm first. Well, as is always the case with this government, they'll probably pinch my idea once I say it. But look, we are committed to really tackling on NHS waiting lists, getting those waiting lists back down. And what we're saying is extra investment in more operations, more appointments, and we do that, yes, by clamping down on tax evasion and particularly, Chris, in tightening up the non-dom rules, because whilst the government might have pinched our idea, it is riddled with holes, and we would do it properly and get the money in to fund the NHS.
The NHS is always better under a Labour government. Maria Caulfield.
Well, we only run the A&E departments in England, and we have seen a fall in waiting times, both our 4-hour and 12-hour waits. That's this winter, and we did that by opening up 5,000 extra beds, 10,000 extra virtual beds in the community, and our waiting times are 40% lower than in Wales, where Labour run the health service.
Do you think it's fine in England? Do you think
but it's significantly better than compared to Wales. But if you see what we did this winter, in March we had the busiest ever month for A&E attendances, and despite that, our 4-hour waits, our 12-hour waits
compare
have
it with the
significantly
NHS in England under the last Labour government. Lowest waiting times, lowest waiting lists,
highest pandemic, which shut down the health service.
No, we had a
for
global
2 years.
financial crash. Highest patient satisfaction. That's Labour's record on the NHS.
I worked in the NHS under a Labour government, and never
And it was
again.
much better than it is now.
It absolutely was not.
It's time to say thank you. You've been fiery. There's been consensus when it's been most important, I would say.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure to have you both, Maria Caulfield, Health Minister, and Shadow Health Minister, Andrew Gwynn.